Building a nation is one of humanity's grandest and most difficult challenges. Expanding territory, establishing laws, and uniting people require years of blood, sweat, and tears. We often assume that a nation can only be born through such overwhelming effort and careful, deliberate planning. However, history is littered with countries that vanished for reasons that make you think, wait, seriously? Some were created with virtually no planning and disappeared almost as soon as they were born. Others collapsed because of mistakes so obvious that even a kindergartner might have avoided them. These stories are filled with human foolishness, irony, and a strange kind of charm. Today, we explore the stories of 3 countries that met their end for truly ridiculous reasons. Enjoy their brief journeys and their unbelievably unexpected endings. First up is the Republic of Perloja. This nation met its end due to a tragic blunder. It began when a small Lithuanian village declared independence. The people there held a cherished legend in their hearts. Around 1380, Grand Duke Vytautas the Great, Lithuania's greatest hero, ruled the land. He was a legend, with myths saying his horse could drink up floodwaters to save people. This hero built a church in Perloja and granted the villagers a special privilege. The residents of this land shall never be serfs. In the Middle Ages, serfs were essentially halfway between slaves and farmers. Vytautas promised to free them from this system. This privilege protected the people of Perloja for centuries. For example, long after Vytautas had died, a local lord attempted to reinstate serfdom. Just as the villagers fell into despair, believing the legend had been nothing more than a fairy tale, Lithuanian soldiers suddenly appeared and fought to protect their freedom. The villagers rejoiced, realizing that the legend had been true all along. Thus, the bond between Perloja and Lithuania became unbreakable. This trust endured for nearly 500 years, during which the people enjoyed a life of freedom. But a crisis suddenly arrived at the end of World War I in the early 20th century. Located near the border, Perloja faced the threat of invasion, bringing its peaceful days to an end. Europe was in chaos and national borders were being redrawn. Russia was consumed by civil war. Germany remained powerful, and Poland sought to expand its territory. Amid this growing tension, the people of Perloja feared one thing above all. In this chaos, will we cease to be part of Lithuania? They were terrified of losing their bond with the nation that had honored Grand Duke Vytautas's promise and protected them for 500 years. Facing this crisis, they first attempted a peaceful solution. They sent envoys to representatives of the League of Nations in Vilnius to plead their case. But their desperate appeals were ignored. Even the Lithuanian government was overwhelmed by post-war chaos and paid little attention to a tiny village in the east. With all diplomatic avenues closed, they were left with only one option: to declare independence. They resolved to protect their freedom with their own hands. They proudly declared the Republic of Perloja. They elected a prime minister, established laws, and even organized a proper army. They built a nation from scratch. However, reality was harsh. As they feared, borders were redrawn, and most of the village was placed under Polish territory. Cut off from Lithuania, they had to defend themselves. They couldn't easily resist the powerful Polish forces. When Polish police arrived, the villagers were forced to hide in caves until they left. It was a life of fleeing and hiding.
Exhausted by this humiliation, they finally made a fateful decision.
"We will not bow to foreign rule." They chose to ambush what they believed were Polish police forces. Taking up hidden weapons, they bravely launched their attack. However, a tragic misunderstanding occurred. The people they risked their lives to attack were not the hated Polish forces. They were Lithuanians. In a cruel twist of fate, they had attacked the soldiers of the very country they trusted, honored, and desperately wanted to rejoin. The Lithuanian army, shocked by this tragic case of friendly fire, retreated at first, but soon returned with a decisive counterattack. The armed villagers were quickly captured. Although they were eventually released after it was proven that they had no malicious intent, the Republic of Perloja had already lost its ability to govern. As a result, the entire village was placed under Polish control. Thus, the Republic of Perloja came to an end after only a few months, undone by the fatal mistake of attacking the wrong people. It may sound ridiculous, but considering that they fought for their freedom and pride, their story still deserves a measure of sympathy and respect. However, some countries perished due to mistakes that deserve absolutely no sympathy. Next is the Islands of Refreshment. This country was pleasantly named, but it was founded by a man with a business plan that was, in reality, completely reckless. That man was Jonathan Lambert, an American sailor. He devised a bold idea. "I'll build my own country, a paradise for myself and fellow sailors." Without hesitation, he began planning with two associates, Andrew Millet and Thomas Curry. Lambert made a deal with Thomas Curry, saying, "Help me build this country, and I'll pay you." The pay was generous, roughly the annual salary of a maid, but paid monthly. Naturally, Thomas agreed. They set sail for the uninhabited island of Tristan da Cunha in the South Atlantic, where Lambert pinned his dreams of wealth. Upon landing, he declared ownership of the island and its neighbors, proclaiming, "This island belongs to my heirs and me forever." A new kingdom was born. He named it the Islands of Refreshment. The name suggested a place where travelers could rest, essentially a service stop in the middle of the ocean. Lambert viewed nation-building purely as a business. His plan was simple: grow fresh vegetables and sell food to passing ships. He announced that vessels of any nation were welcome to visit for supplies. A resort and a trading hub at sea. On paper, it sounded perfect. His vision was ambitious, yet on the surface, a solid business idea. Providing services at a transportation hub is usually a model that works. However, there was one fatal flaw in this innovative plan: location. No matter how good the idea, it means nothing without the right place. Lambert completely ignored this basic rule. The Islands of Refreshment sat in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, 6 days by ship from the nearest land, South Africa. From Europe or America, the journey was even longer. Naturally, travelers did not regularly pass through the middle of nowhere. The business collapsed immediately. The only visitors were pirates, not coming to trade, but to steal. It was the worst possible outcome. The bad location led to tragedy. Desperate for income, they tried hunting seals to produce oil to sell to sailors. But once again, no ships meant no buyers. They ended up with piles of seal oil and 0 customers. They tried anything they could to survive. Worse still, they ran out of food. In the middle of the ocean, without a proper kitchen, they could not even bake bread. They were forced to survive on turnips alone. Life on the so-called Islands of Refreshment was grueling. They managed to survive for about a year, but in 1812, tragedy struck. Lambert and his partners went fishing and never returned. They most likely drowned. The only one left was Thomas Curry. Remember him, the man who had been hired on a monthly salary? With his boss dead, there was no one left to pay him. Poor Curry was left completely alone on the island. The island fell into anarchy and misery, but the final blow was yet to come: the British Empire. One day, the British Navy arrived and declared the island a naval base. The reason was Napoleon Bonaparte. Britain feared the island could be used as a staging point to rescue Napoleon, who had been exiled to St. Helena. This was despite the fact that St. Helena was more than 2,100 kilometers away. It may sound paranoid, but the British were deeply traumatized by Napoleon's earlier escape from Elba. They were determined to eliminate even the smallest risk. And so they targeted the islands of Refreshment. When British forces landed, Thomas Curry, alone and unpaid, offered no resistance. He surrendered immediately. For him, the arrival of the British was likely a relief rather than a threat. Thus, the nation built on a shaky business plan and a terrible location came to an end, disappearing like a badly planned pub that never got a single customer. You might think nations should be planned better, but the world is vast. There is a country that perished even faster than the islands of Refreshment. That country is the Republic of Rough and Ready, from the American Wild West. 1849, California Gold Rush. People dreaming of quick riches flocked to the Sierra Nevada mountains. The Rough and Ready Company established a town named after itself. It grew explosively into a town of 3,000 people, symbolizing the American dream. It even almost became the county seat. However, trouble brewed. Locals clashed with outsiders seeking fortune. A local hero, Josh Swigart, lost a rigged bet to a slick outsider named Ravi Slicker about mining gold, which humiliated the town. Tensions rose. Then came the final straw, a new mining tax. For a town dependent on gold, this tax was a disaster. Fueled by anger against outsiders and the government, the residents decided, we'll kick everyone out and become independent. On April 7, 1850, they actually declared independence from the United States. The Great Republic of Rough and Ready was born. It was a bold move typical of the frontier spirit. They drafted a constitution, designed a flag, and elected a president. The president declared, "We deem it necessary and wise to withdraw from the United States, peaceably if we can, forcibly if we must." They were serious. However, their actual management was sloppy. The Constitution was basically a copy-paste of the U.S. Constitution. The flag looked like a child's drawing. Despite their passion, the Republic of Rough and Ready was an empty shell. They began their independent journey feeling proud and satisfied, but the end came suddenly just 3 months later. On July 4, 1850, U.S. Independence Day, the residents traveled to a nearby town to buy alcohol for a celebration. However, the shopkeeper refused to sell it to them. "Why?" they demanded. "Because you're foreigners. You seceded. You're no longer American citizens. I can't sell liquor to foreigners." Then he added, "You shouldn't even be celebrating July 4th. You aren't Americans anymore." The residents were stunned. They hadn't thought it through at all. Their impulsive declaration of independence had backfired in the worst possible way. Panic set in. Their biggest problem: we can't get booze for the party. A 4th of July without alcohol was unthinkable. They held an emergency meeting to address the crisis. The conclusion was instant. If we have to stay sober, we don't need independence. They voted to revoke their secession and rejoin the United States immediately. Yes, the Republic of Rough and Ready perished because they wanted a drink. Thanks to this decision, they got their alcohol and threw a massive party. It was a pathetic end for a nation, but a very human story. Today we introduced 3 countries that fell for ridiculous reasons. They may seem comical, but they all had a firm belief in pursuing their ideals. Perhaps we can learn something from their passion and action, even if the results were laughable. History is full of mysteries. Let's continue exploring these stories together. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and subscribe to our channel for more historical stories. See you on our next journey. Thanks for watching.